Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase podcast. Today we are talking with Markella Kaplani. Markella is based in Athens, Greece. It's kind of a surprise to me. I didn't expect that, but welcome to the show. She is a motherhood coach and empowers new moms to recover themselves through motherhood. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
How did you get started on this journey? Kind of different.
Well, I've studied psychology. So my background is in psychology. I've been counseling for over 15 years. At the same time, I also found myself as a young person looking for a job in counseling. I ended up in special education. It was the only position being offered to me. And so I took it and fell in love with it. And so I continued on a path where I kind of did both. And this gave me a perspective of how the family works. So I was doing adult and child counseling. And at the same time, I was also seeing parents and helping children in their academic, the academic space. And special education for me is very much emotion-based. You need to tap into the child's emotions first before you can teach them any tool. You can teach them the tool. They won't use it if they're not ready, if they're not emotionally at the place where they can use it. And so I was blessed in a way to see the entire dynamic of how a child's psychology works and how parents feel. And then I would see also adults with self-esteem issues. Usually I had more so of women come to my office, and it was mostly working on self-esteem, confidence, and such matters. And so when I became a mother, the first thing that happened is it really hit me very hard, because I was and I am the type of person that's a go-getter, ambitious, wants to do everything. I have a million hobbies and things I take up and books I want to read and all these things. I do trainings after trainings. And I was under the impression, like I think most women are, that motherhood is yet another role. And since I've aced the other ones in a way, then this is just another one that I'm bound to do well in, because that's just what I do. And it didn't work like that, basically. That's what happened. It just didn't work like that. Let's just
Never
say
does.
that. Exactly. It was a lie. That's not exactly how it works. And so I started to wonder what's happening after for a while being in a state where I found myself in the middle. I wasn't enjoying motherhood like I was quote unquote supposed to. At the same time, I wasn't clinically depressed, so I didn't have postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. I wouldn't be diagnosed if I went somewhere, but I was stuck in this middle space where I felt like nobody got me. So I was either supposed to be at a clinical level, so that it would be, her hormones are out of whack, like they say, and so she's excused. Or I would have to be in a place where I'm supposed to feel joy all the time. And I was in neither of these places. And I was just expected to snap out of it and go to the place of joy. And I wanted to. but I couldn't get there. And I was wondering what's happening. So as I started to put things together, I realized that I started bumping into things through my own experience and practice with other women in the past, and thinking through the issues that I had helped parents with. And I realized what was going on. I started looking into it and became very, very passionate about helping mothers, because I realized how much, even though I had seen this before becoming a mother, I realized it even more, just how much we expect from mothers, but how little we support them. We are there for the pregnant woman and we don't let her do anything, and we pamper her. And then the minute she gives birth, it's kind of like she's left to her own devices. She's supposed to figure it out. Nature will take its course. You're supposed to know what to do because, there's been mothers for millions of years. You know what you're doing. And so there's this huge expectation with this very, very low support system. Everything that a woman gets support for as she becomes a mom is baby-centered. How to help the baby, how to understand the baby, how to breastfeed if you choose to breastfeed, sleep training, what to do, what to eat if you're breastfeeding, what to help your child eat. And all of these things, there are millions of courses and books and seminars, but all of them are centered around helping the mom help the child, which is wonderful. But how about helping the mom herself? And
And
so
how about the expectation the mom has around all of these things? I can remember breastfeeding my first child and thinking I'm supposed to just sit here and stare at this child in awe and wonder. As I had more kids, I realized, you can read a book or watch television. It really doesn't matter. You're just feeding them.
yeah, right.
But
Because
there was this expectation.
Yeah, and this is basically what led me to motherhood coaching. I decided I wanted to kind of combine all of the things that I loved, because I do love working with children. And I felt like it was very impactful to see children start to shine again, see that spark in their eyes again after they felt validated, after they felt that there was nothing wrong with them, and that they could conquer the things that they were told they couldn't. And so letting that go was difficult unless I would find a way to kind of combine what I wanted to do. And so I found that helping mothers in a way that's not critical, because I felt like a lot of people that help with parenting are quite judgmental, honestly, if we really think about it, in terms of what they expect of parents. So they're helping on the one hand. On the other hand, I felt like a lot of my colleagues, as I would speak to them, had this kind of very, very particular way that parents had to be in order to be, quote unquote, good parents. And I felt like I wanted to give a little bit of more flexibility, a little bit more compassion and understanding to this space of motherhood, because I feel that this in turn also affects the child. So we blame mothers, mostly mothers. We usually don't blame fathers. We usually blame mothers if there's something that's troubling a child. So whether that is academics or that is emotional, it's usually the mother that we point to. Oh, the mother didn't give enough attention. Oh, the mother wasn't there, blah, 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 blah. But then, have we helped this mother? Have we allowed her to give attention? Or have we given her so many responsibilities and so little support that she couldn't possibly be there? What are we doing to rectify that, instead of just blame her for something that she wasn't able to fix, but now she feels guilt over and shame? And this guilt and shame just puts her in a loop of behaviors that she doesn't want to engage in. So that's a very long answer to say why I decided to focus on motherhood coaching.
I'm glad that you did. I can see it in my own daughters and daughter-in-laws. You become a mom, and suddenly you're just expected to be this different person, but you're not. And we don't have the extended families or the large families that people used to have, where you kind of learned about childcare, and you learned how babies fit into the family, and you could keep your identity still because they were just another member in the family, and they had their spot. That because we have smaller families and people aren't having children until they're much later and they only have one or two, the siblings don't really understand what it is to take care of one another. And they don't understand when they experience birth and they bring another human into the world, they're like, now what do I do with it?
Yeah, that's
And
exactly it. There's a
and
lot of pressure to be different than the previous generation. And I understand, because there is a lot of research that has helped us understand different parenting techniques and different ways of doing things. But at the same time, we are putting ourselves in a much more difficult situation now. So in itself, like you said, society at this point is very individualistic. We don't have extended family, and so we don't get enough support, and we don't get to see it all happen and play out. When people lived in villages, you would get the parents and the parent-in-laws and the sisters, then the sisters-in-law and the brothers. Everybody was just living around each other in the same building, and it was so natural for, let's say, your teenage daughter to watch your sister raise her baby and to be there and to take over at some points. And so when she became a mother later on, not only was she also surrounded by a number of people who would just naturally take over. They were around. You didn't have to call them. You didn't have to feel like you're obliging. You didn't have to feel like you're a burden, like many mothers feel now, even to their own mothers. So even those that do have support, do you know that I actually get mothers that tell me, oh yeah, I have my mother living in for a few months now that I gave birth, but I don't ask her for help. I'm reluctant to wake her up in the middle of the night, even though I don't get to sleep, because I should be able to do it on my own. She's leaving in a month. I should be able to do it on my own. There are single mothers doing this. I should be able to do it on my own. Like, it's not her decision that I had a baby. It's not her responsibility. So I feel bad to wake her up, even though she willingly came for this reason. So we have this tendency to feel like we're supposed to do it on our own, because we haven't seen this sharing of responsibility. And also this, in the example, this teenage daughter that was there and watching all of this, when she becomes a mother, yes, she is a natural at it, but what does that mean? Well, she's seen it. In a way, she's raised babies. She's seen other women raise babies around her. She's taken some responsibility. She knows what it's like. But now we're not naturals at it, because when we were young, we were never exposed.
exactly. That is my point. Exactly. And if you're disconnected from your mother, as some of us were, you're really at a loss. When I can remember when I had my first daughter, and she's like 41 now, that I didn't know anything about babies. I wasn't around other people who had babies at all growing up, because we moved around a lot, and I didn't have any extended family that I was particularly close to. So I had this new being, and I had a job. And the working moms, when you throw that into the mix, the guilt is just like through the roof. It's like, I have no idea what to do with this being. And I don't even know who I am anymore. It's like, am I a mom? Am I a work person? Am I
Right. When in the
a
past,
wife?
before motherhood, the identity was quite clear, because everything else is just a role. But going back to what I was saying, when motherhood smacked me in the face, as I started to look into it and I started to specialize in this, I even did a training. I figured out about this thing called matrescence, which is purposely named like and sounds like adolescence. It's a term that was first coined by an anthropologist, Dana Raphael, and she was basically describing this passage, this rite of passage into motherhood. And what it's trying to say is that all these things that adolescents have, the hormonal changes and the physical changes and the emotional changes that are accompanied by mood swings and all these things, a woman goes through as she enters motherhood. So we're talking about an entire identity shift. Like an adolescent tries to figure out their identity during the teenage years, the mother is figuring out this new identity that forms. So it's not just another role that you add and you say, okay, I'll conquer this one like I've conquered the others, and I'll adjust and I'll balance. And so many mothers have such guilt about the fact that they're not able to find this balance in life that they're told they have to find. But this is not an added role. This is a whole identity shift. Who am I now? And by identity shift, that means that all the other roles will be affected. So my identity was A, and I had these roles, and this is how everything functioned. But now my identity is B. How do these roles function around this identity? We're talking about a huge transition. And by not recognizing this, and the fact that, I speak about matrescence and everybody's in awe, like, oh, most people will say, I've never heard of this before. The fact that we're not aware that this is the process means we're not supporting mothers through this process. We're making them go through this alone and to feel like they're experiencing something very strange. And so a lot of them end up feeling like they're bad mothers. I wasn't meant to be a mother. I've heard women say that. I have said that myself. Like, I had a baby, but I obviously wasn't meant to become a mother because I'm having such a hard time transitioning into this, like, if I really wanted it and if I really was ready, wouldn't this have been more natural and flowy? That's what we're led to believe. But it's not natural and flowy because we don't get enough support. We're not told that, hey, your entire world will change. Everything will shift and you will need some time to adjust.
And it's okay to take the time.
Exactly.
It's the one thing that I stress with anybody that I come across that's pregnant. It's like, it's okay. Take that month after the baby comes. If you bathe 3 times that month, you're like rocking it, girl. Let some of the things that you hold yourself accountable to slide. All you need to do is just, keep that little thing alive. Sleep when it sleeps. Be awake when it's awake. Let it rule your life for a little while until you get your footing, because you can drive yourself crazy trying to be the perfect everything and figuring out who you are as a mom. It's just so hard.
It's a lot to juggle, along with the perfection that is expected of mothers. And a lot of times the difficulty lies in the fact that the perfect mother is very different from the perfect woman by societal standards. The perfect woman, after feminism, is a woman that is able to take care of the home, but also rise to the top of her career and be able to do it all on her own. And even if she has a partner, she doesn't depend on the partner and she has her finances sorted. That's the perfect woman. The perfect mother is one that is fully fulfilled by motherhood. She only wants to be with her baby all the time. Especially if she doesn't need to financially, she doesn't want to go back to work. She doesn't care about her job. Now, because she's become a mother, all of a sudden, all the things that she was passionate about are gone. Her hobbies don't interest her anymore. They're, she doesn't need them. So all of these things, for me, for instance, being a person that I took up a different hobby every year, the minute that I became a mother, and it became very difficult. I had quite of a needy baby. I felt this pull toward my hobbies at some point, and I felt, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't want this. I shouldn't need this. Like, in all of this chaos, what I'm thinking about is, how do I go back to my jewelry making? But it was a part of me. It was my way of expression and creativity. It was my way of calming. And to deny myself that also meant that I was taking a bit away from who I was. and not finding other ways, right? It wasn't making it okay to find other ways. So maybe I couldn't do jewelry, but I did need to be okay with the fact that I need to channel my energy some kind of way. So this becomes a very big issue in motherhood, that we're supposed to be this perfect woman and this perfect mother, and there's a very big gap between those two, and reconciling it takes up so much energy.
Yeah. And it's the expectations of others that you're thinking, because you're right. There are these two things, and they're diametrically opposed, for one
Mm-hmm.
thing. And no one fills both roles. No one really fills either one of those roles perfectly either. It's not possible to be that perfect feminist woman who has a job and rises to the top of her career and raises, children that are well adjusted. That doesn't happen. I can tell you from personal experience, it doesn't happen. I used to be that woman, and then I was the other woman with my last three, where I was home all the time. We homeschooled, we did all this stuff, but just being a mom is not a fulfilling role as a human being. It's part of an identity, but it can't be your whole identity, because when those kids grow up, then who are you? And you find a lot of women, when they hit the empty nester stage, they're just like, they don't love their husband anymore, because they haven't known their husband for all of these years, where they were just focused on the kids, and everything was around the kids and doing stuff with the kids. And there's also stages through motherhood. Nothing is ever static. And as the kids grow, their needs change, and you're able to do more things in your life and pursue other interests. And if the mom can be empowered to do the things that fundamentally are who she is, and she can retain some of that, it makes the kids' life more rich, and they start to see that it's okay to be who you are. You can have children, and children can enhance your life. They don't have to become your life. I guess is
Right. You're describing it very well. That is part of matrescence that we were talking about before, because matrescence basically says it's not just so adolescence is kind of, it's finite. It starts at some point and is said to end at some point. However, matrescence, because exactly of those stages that you're talking about, the child growing, becoming a toddler, going to school, and then the second one coming in, possibly, and third, a fourth, and then the kids leaving the house altogether. All of these are stages that children go through, but the mother's identity shifts because her role in their lives keeps on shifting. So these transitions keep on happening within motherhood. So what I do is, a lot of it is focused on new mothers who tend to struggle more. And usually I work with women that are multi-passionate, that are multi-talented, that are very ambitious. And so that was a big part of their identity, was achieving the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then motherhood comes in and it just feels like, oh God, I've lost the game already. And so, I help them come to terms with the fact that you do need to work on the underlying issues that have led you all your life to be like this. And motherhood doesn't have to be a slap in the face and a failure. It can be a transformation where you are finally faced with the fact that what you were doing before no longer works. It wasn't good for you then, but it's not cutting it right now at all. And so you can use motherhood as a healing process, really, to look at stuff that you were hiding under that overachieving kind of attitude, instead of feel like a failure and be disillusioned and suck it up, and also do the same thing you were doing before, trying to be perfect in this area as well. So where was I going with this? So yeah, I was saying what you're saying is perfectly aligned with that, because you end up at some point being left with nothing. If your full identity shifts to children, to your children, I don't necessarily believe that it's wrong, because there are women that all their lives, since they were small girls, they thought of getting married and having kids. And so maybe what's fulfilling for them has always been raising children and being devoted there. I don't doubt that there are women out there that definitely feel fulfilled by this. But before getting into motherhood, who were you and what fulfilled you? And it's very important to keep part of that intact and to see which part of that you're taking with you, so that, as you described, when the children leave, how do you still, if your need was to take care of children, how do you deal with that then? Do you maybe then go into a field of work where you get to work with children? Right? So there are options, but it is very important that we give ourselves this option, and that for those, because the women that I speak with definitely had a very strong identity before becoming mothers. Especially when they go into motherhood and decide that I need to devote myself completely, and they drop everything else, then they're at a point where they become self-sacrificial. They deny themselves pleasures that they used to have. They deny themselves parts of their identity that are very important and align with their values, so that when motherhood is not something that needs their daily attention anymore, it becomes very difficult to tap back into that.
And it sometimes can cause the kids to actually be more dependent and less independent as they grow up also. The helicopter mom that doesn't ever let their kids run around and skin their knees and climb on rocks and do things that they probably shouldn't be doing, are very dangerous, but you as a mom just should not know about. They need some of these experiences. And if you can help women understand that it's okay, you don't have to know what your kid's doing all the time. I know when I was growing up, the signal was the lights went on in the neighborhood. You needed to be home when the street lights came on. But beyond that, there were times, well, I lived in Japan when I was young. I was a teenager, and I would go to Tokyo, arguably the largest city in the world. And my parents wouldn't know. We lived on a base about a couple hours away from Tokyo, and my parents would not even know where I was. They would not have any idea that I was in Tokyo. No cell phones.
Yeah,
a foreign country. But there were trains and I had a pass. Go anywhere I wanted.
Right. Things are a little bit different in our society now. Things are less innocent, I think. Not like there wasn't crime rates before, but I understand parents who want to have a little bit more control, but like you're saying, it could go to a point where your child can't breathe. But even if we don't talk about extreme cases like a mother that feels like she has to helicopter around her child, even if we just talk about a mom who is very careful about these things because she's read her books and she's been to a psychologist, because I know parents, and I applaud them. I know parents that the minute that the woman is pregnant, they go to a child psychologist or a therapist, and they start just preventively working on things so that they can be up to date. And so let's say we're talking about this scenario. It's still something that your children see, that you've denied yourself everything. And as much as you want to be fulfilled by motherhood, there is quite a bit of a chance that you're not fully fulfilled. It's only natural. And this does come out somehow, even by the example that you said, even if it's not on an emotional level, and you really have found ways to be fulfilled in motherhood. Your daughter, your son watching you be completely there and do nothing else. What example is that setting? So what I try to do in my work with mothers is because a lot of them are baby centered. And that's part biology, because we're wired to be centering our child first. And so on a positive note, that makes us, as we become mothers, our brain starts to work in we rather than I. And even the more selfish will become much more in tune with the world and the needs of others, especially as it pertains to their child. But even so, what happens is that they see a mother that doesn't do anything else, that doesn't have an I. It's only a we. It's never an I. And what message does that say? That the mother that I absolutely love and adore and think she's, she's the example for everything. She's my model, my role model. Well, she sacrifices herself for us. That's what true love is. And then you see your child in a relationship that is not healthy. You see your child trying to gain love, and how do they do it? By sacrificing themselves. And then you wonder why. But that's the example we set. And so I try to take away the guilt from the mom that, you're not being selfish by keeping parts of you. You're actually teaching your child the things that you want to instill. You want them to be happy. Are you happy? You want them to do things on their own and keep parts of themselves and be independent, even when they're in a relationship. Do you do that? You want them to take care of themselves and love themselves and be compassionate and not beat themselves up for mistakes. Do you do that? Do you show them this?
And
We have this
boundaries.
illusion that, because I don't tell my child how I berate myself. I call myself stupid in my head, but I don't call myself stupid in front of my child. And I'm a perfectionist, but I allow my child to do anything. Like, I'm not perfectionistically on top of them if they make a mistake. Yeah, but they see you, how you treat yourself. It's the vibe, it's the energy. You are setting the ground for it. And I'm saying, and I'm hearing it myself, because that's always something that I have to keep in mind, that I have to keep working on myself, knowing that I do have that tendency to perfectionism. And as much as I consciously have it in my head, it will come out.
Yeah, it will. And having boundaries for yourself with your children, but also allowing them to have boundaries with you and respecting those boundaries. That's so important for moms to understand. It's okay to have boundaries, but it's really important that you teach your children how to set boundaries and to hold their boundaries, and for you as a parent to respect those boundaries. It's an interesting shift in dynamics, but it allows a child to be powerful.
Right. I think that the first way that we teach them when they're young is exactly like you said, that we have boundaries and that we keep those boundaries. So that, for example, when my son would say that he's disappointed, that he's feeling sad, when I would start working, because I went into work slowly but surely. If I would say, okay, I'll cancel today because you're disappointed, then I would not be showing a clear boundary. I would not be showing dedication. I would not be showing consistency. These are all things that we teach by example, first and foremost. But then as they grow older and they try to set boundaries, that's also what you're saying is, yes, you have to respect those boundaries, so long as we're not talking about a life or death issue. It's very important to help them become empowered in having, like, when they say no, it's a no, and let them figure it out themselves, what we're trying to say, that this is going to be harmful. So if we're not talking about something dangerous, then let them figure it out. It's critical, but we've been told that a good parent is on top of everything. And I think at some point we became very critical with the previous generation. And yes, our parents have made mistakes. It's a given. All parents make mistakes. There were some things that they were taught by behavioral psychologists. And so part of it is not even their fault. Behavioral psychology told them to do certain things that they did. They told them that a baby crying is manipulating you, so let it cry it out. And so we've got a lot of adults in our generation with lots of trauma, not knowing why they're carrying this trauma that dates back to a point where they don't remember that they were probably just left to cry it out, not from a mother that didn't care, but from a mother that was shamed into thinking that if she were to respond to every cry, she would be allowing her child to manipulate her, and she would be making her child dependent. But because the baby doesn't know this, the baby was led to believe that it was unimportant, that it was not loved. And so we see a lot of adults carrying this trauma. And now that we know better, we've gotten to the other end of the extreme where we don't allow ourselves any part of us to exist. We think that any part of us is, too much, is going to take away from the child, is going to make them feel that they were not important, is going to make them feel neglected. And so we've taken it to the other extreme, which is usually how it works. We usually go from one extreme to the other extreme until we reach equilibrium. And so I find that at this stage in our generation of parents, we do have the other extreme of trying to prevent all the stuff that we had to go through, but overdoing it in the process to the extent where we burn ourselves out as parents and especially as mothers, because we're still the main caregivers. And this is where I try to come in and kind of bring a little bit of a balance, that it's okay. Just because you are giving yourself some space and some time, and you're slowly, weaving your core identity back into your maternal identity that will always be there and shape things. Just because you're weaving back your old identity, just because you are missing it sometimes, doesn't make you a neglectful mother. It's not black or white.
Exactly. It's all a process, and we feel our way through it, and it's okay. Mostly moms need to know it's okay to be you. It's okay to do the things the way you want to do them. There's not a right or wrong way to be a great mom. Just love your kid. And however that looks for you, it doesn't have to be staring at it, gazing into its eyes. If that's not you, that's fine. Your kid will be okay.
Yeah, I think there is this unspoken rule that there's a manual out there that people aren't sharing, and that's hidden in the dozens of books that we try to read until we give birth. Which is like, I'm talking about myself right now, that I was trying to, having worked with children, having worked with children in the counseling space, having worked with parents, having all that knowledge. So I had the background, and I still fell into the trap of, I need to read all the books and that I haven't read still, and I need to understand what's currently going on, and I need to know. I had this book of a week to week how a child is supposed to be growing up and showing signs of what their sleep pattern is and what their eating pattern is, and I wanted to have everything in a book so that I would be reassured that I was not breaking my child and I was doing everything correctly. And then at some point, it just, nothing was going by the book. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm doing an awful job here. And so we've been fed this lie that there are books that will tell us how things will go. And when things don't go as we heard other mothers say, or the book say, we feel like we must be doing something awful. We don't trust our instincts anymore. We think that we weren't fit for this. And so we need somebody else to tell us what it's supposed to look like. And then come in all the experts, right? So who do I trust? Because I had one mom come in and tell me that she had 5 or 6 breastfeeding experts come in, and it wasn't successful. And she heard very different opinions from all of them, and their opinions. And then another one who had hired 3 sleep therapists, and thankfully didn't listen to the first 3. And they kept on telling her very different things about the way that she's supposed to respond to her child needing her in the middle of the night, and how she's supposed to train her baby to sleep. All these things we need to be very wary about, and to be able to listen to our instincts about. what's going on a little bit more. I'm not saying don't trust anything. I'm not saying don't read any books. I'm not saying don't see any experts. But what I'm saying is listen and follow with what feels right for you and your child and the specific child, right? Because children
They're
from the
all
same
different.
mother are quite different, right? I have only one. You can attest to, you have five.
I have five.
They're all
And
very
when it
different,
comes
and we
to
need to
sleep,
adjust every time.
the three younger ones slept with me. The oldest was 12 when they finally like decided they could sleep in their own rooms.
12? Oh God, I have a long way to go,
Yeah.
huh?
I, and it was perfectly fine. My husband's a truck driver, was gone most of the time, so I didn't mind. We had a king size bed, and three of them slept with me, and it was nice. I have a really close relationship with them. We had a lot of fun, but it was it was just exploring what worked for us, and what works for one individual doesn't necessarily work for another, and it's okay. Really
Yeah, you know how many
empowering women.
parents get shamed for co-sleeping?
I know, it's so ridiculous. And breastfeeding is another one that, you know,
Oh, you can't get it right with breastfeeding. If you don't
I,
breastfeed, you've ruined your child forever. You didn't give them the advantages that breastfeeding gives. But then if you breastfeed, did you breastfeed too long and then you got them too attached? And if you go into psychoanalysis and it's especially if it's a boy, then it just they I think it's very detrimental, all these theories floating around, and for people not to be reminded a lot of times that these are all theories. They're theories, and we get to choose which theory will work. And if you don't want to choose because you don't feel like you're an expert enough to choose, I feel you. Look at the research, look at the most current research and see what's being said.
and try it on, and you don't have to like stay in it. I have a daughter-in-law she's breastfeeding. Her idea of breastfeeding is she pumps. She has this portable pump, and she just slaps them on there and goes about her day, and she feeds her baby a bottle, and it's great. He's getting breast milk, which is really important. But she's not having to sit there with the baby. She can have other people do it. The nanas can do it, and I love it. But he's used to being passed around a little bit and having other people help him. But he's he's getting breast milk, and she's pumped a lot. And I have another grandson coming in a couple months, and they've got like milk for them too, because she had problems breastfeeding and she didn't know about these pumps that my other daughter-in-law had. Though this other daughter-in-law is getting them this time. And she's like, I'm gonna try that. But it's just the freedom of, yeah, this is working for her. Great. And she shared it with her sister-in-law that, it could work. It might
Exactly.
not. And if it doesn't work, hey, I got a ton in my freezer and I'll just ship it right over to you. We all live in the
Right.
same town, and
Right. There's no one way. And then when we think of things that this way, that there's one way and that's the right way, then we become very trapped when things don't go our way. And I see it a lot that there's this lack of flexibility. There's one way to do things. And for each mother, it's a different way. So it's very interesting that they think there's only one way of doing things, and each one comes in with a very different expectation. If my expectation is, for example, to breastfeed, but to do it with a pump, if it doesn't work with a pump, because, for example, for a lot of women, they have enough breast milk, but when they pump, it looks like it's little. And then there's this discrepancy and they don't get it that, no, you have enough breast milk, but the pump doesn't necessarily extract as much as you would have instead. So if they have a low supply and they want to pump and give it so that they can do the system that you're talking about, which, if I were to have a second, that's probably how I would have done it, because I breastfed exclusively without pumping, without a bottle. And so my son never took the bottle. And at some point when I wanted to continue breastfeeding, but not have to be the one that's exclusively doing it, he didn't want it. So if you have that in mind, so let's suppose that I would have wanted to do this for the second, but what if they didn't take the bottle anyway? What if, even if I try it very early on, what if they don't take it? What happens then? My plans are ruined. Oh my God, I'm going to be stuck again. Now I'll have to do this, or do I stop breastfeeding? And is it okay to stop, to just deny breastfeeding even though I have milk? And, and there's all this thing when there could be flexibility. And to be able to say that, you know what, it didn't pan out the way I wanted. What's the other best case scenario that also keeps me healthy? We think that the ultimate motherhood, the ultimate mother will sacrifice all her needs. But there is a world where the child is perfectly cared for and the mother also takes care of her needs. And she does something that's not necessarily perfect by the book or by the best friend or by the expert next door, but it works well for her. And it works just fine for her child. Yes, they could have had something better. So the child that's not breastfed, okay, yes, we know there are benefits to breastfeeding for sure. And I'm an advocate for breastfeeding. And I have a breastfeeding specialist that is amazing. And I recommend to mothers. So the mother that came to me with 5 experts in the past, I sent her to mine and she was like, hallelujah, However, there are mothers who will choose not to breastfeed, or they'll end up not breastfeeding and they'll feel so guilty and so shameful for not having been able to do it, as if they ruined their child. But they're more healthy psychologically by not breastfeeding. And what the child needs more than anything is a mother who's able to be there and is not breaking herself down. And that is so much better than the benefits of breastfeeding. So if you can be well and breastfeed, sure, go ahead. But if you're going to be completely misaligned, you're completely disillusioned, and you have to sacrifice yourself to the extent where you're breaking down, then what good does this breastfeeding do to your child?
Exactly. Just so well put. I know you have an offer for people that visit your website. It's called the 5-day mini-series to reclaim your identity. And we're going to put that in the show notes, the link to that in the show notes below. Markella, is there one thing you'd like to leave the audience with today?
I think that as based on the conversation that we had, if I would leave one note, it would be that motherhood is an entire identity shift, that it's okay to feel like it's taking a while. And if that while is, a few months or a year or 2 years, it's fine. It's part of the process. And that everything is going to change. So we need to kind of be more flexible in our understanding and our expectation of how things are supposed to work, because we're basically taught somehow that everything is supposed to go back to normal, and normal with quotations. Everything's supposed to go back, and that actually keeps us from moving forward. The expectation that everything is supposed to go back to how it was, and that's the good thing, is not allowing us to see motherhood as a beautiful transformation that we can use to our advantage to really move forward. We're not supposed to be going back. We're supposed to be evolving into something even better. So that's what what you talked about, the free 5-day mini video series is all about, is kind of snippets, because I know that moms are busy. And so I created less than 9-minute videos where I introduce mothers, and they can share it with their partners so that they're also aware of the processes, where I talk about matrescence, and then I talk about the changing relationship with ourselves and the new identity, the changing relationship with our partner, the changing relationship with our work, our boss, and how we feel about work, and how we can actually leverage this mom brain that we think is so bad to actually become even better. Our brain does change. Our brain's chemistry changes. The neurons are wired a different way. that actually makes us better at organization, better at prioritizing, better at management. And so even though organizations will treat us like we're less dedicated and devoted and will expect that of us, and will usually put a ceiling over our head after we become mothers, we can actually leverage so much from motherhood in becoming even better at what we do. And lastly, I talk about the changing relationship with the world in a spiritual and existential way. So that's what the guide is about. And I think it's very important in one way or another. It doesn't have to be through this video series, but in one way or another, that mothers or expecting new, even seasoned mothers, get to explore a little bit about this identity shift and validate their feelings and normalize the process.
So beautifully put. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It was lovely having a conversation with you about this.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.